Mr. Secretary, as you know, we have limited time, so I want to get started off with just some very high-level questions, yes or no, and then we can get into details as time allows. First, do you believe that there is a crisis at the southwest border?
Ranking Member Britt, I think there is a very serious challenge at the southern border, as I have articulated.
Yes, sir. Are you willing to call it a crisis?
I consider it a very significant challenge, and I am focused on the substance of the issue and the devotion of resources most effectively to address the challenge that we confront as a country.
Yes, sir. I'm disappointed to not hear you call it a crisis, truly, because I think that's what we have before us. When we look at the budget that President Biden put forward, it's clear that this administration is not afraid of calling out a crisis when they believe they see one. I will note that we have mentioned in the budget a climate crisis. We have mentioned a youth mental crisis. We have a maternal health crisis, a behavioral health crisis. We have a wildfire crisis. We have a crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous persons. We have a biodiversity crisis, and we even have a roadway and pedestrian safety crisis. Now, my point here is not to diminish the seriousness of each and every one of those topics that I just listed. It is to show that President Biden and this administration is not afraid of calling out a crisis if they believe they have one. So I ask you one more time, do you believe we have a crisis at the southwest border?
Ranking Member Britt, let me assure you that whatever language is used does not impact the fact that we are devoting every ounce of energy to address the challenge.
I am hopeful that we can get on the same page about this. When you look at what happens, what would trigger this? If you look at Title 42 ending on May 11th, your own department has said we're going to see almost probably doubled numbers coming across the border at that point in time. Will that elevate it to this administration being able to call it for what it is, a crisis?
Ranking Member Britt, what we have done is we have provided projections, not necessarily in terms of what we anticipate seeing, but rather what we need to plan for.
Well, let's talk about fentanyl then. When we see how much is coming over the border, I mentioned it, and it has already been mentioned here by the chair, but we lost over 100,000 people to drug overdoses, and 70,000 of those, as you mentioned yourself, are attributed to fentanyl. When we look at what's coming across the border, you said in your testimony right now that that is the single greatest challenge facing our nation. So do you believe we have a fentanyl crisis in this nation?
I think the word that you used, Ranking Member Britt, is so appropriate, that we have a scourge of fentanyl. I think it's over 70,000 American lives have been lost. And
is that coming, the majority of that fentanyl coming over the southwest border?
It is coming through. I think it is more than 90% is actually being trafficked through the ports of entry at our southern border. Yes,
what are we doing to be able to capture that at the ports of entry?
So we have surged resources to an unprecedented degree to detect, to interdict the fentanyl from coming, and to investigate and prosecute the individuals who are traffickers.
Okay, what are we doing? Obviously, it has been made note that the Chinese Communist Party are sending those precursors over to Mexico, and what are we doing to disrupt and dismantle that transnational criminal organization, to disrupt that network?
We have brought unprecedented force to that effort, Ranking Member Britt, and I'd like to just cite the new surge operation that we launched last week, Operation Blue Lotus, that I directed, of Homeland Security investigations. We have brought additional Homeland Security investigations agents to the ports of entry so that they have an increased and immediate physical presence there, not only for the assistance in the interdiction of the drugs, but critically for the immediate investigation, apprehension, and ultimately prosecution of the traffickers themselves.
And I appreciate that, and I want you to hear me say we've got to continue to do more. This is affecting communities all across our country. It is affecting children. It is the leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45 in this nation. It is without a doubt a crisis. And I will say once again that I am disappointed that I can't hear you say those words as well. Additionally, I'd like to talk about the border and its security. The chair has already alluded to the fact that whether we talk about operational control or whether we talk about maximizing resources, I'm actually not interested interested in those definitions. What I am interested in is, from your perspective as the Secretary of Homeland Security, do you believe we have a secure border?
Ranking Member Britt, I think I have addressed this issue. As I mentioned, the words we use do not define the actions that we take. The challenge that we confront defines the actions that we take, and we are using every ounce of energy and resource we have to address the challenges not only at our southern border with respect to irregular migration, not only with respect to trafficking of fentanyl, but across the entire breadth of mission of the Department of Homeland Security.
Respectfully, Mr. Secretary, it's not enough. We have a humanitarian crisis, a national security crisis, the face of which becomes very real. You mentioned your trips to the border. I have went to the border 3 times in the first 2 months to see it myself. When you have a border that is 2,000 miles long, there's no way to capture it all without going and seeing and continuing to look and learn. We must do better. Our border is not secure, and we owe it to the citizens of this nation. We owe it to the people who are being trafficked by these drug cartels to take back control. Speaking of, the Border Patrol chief this month said, quote, "The cartels control an awful lot of the southern border south of the United States," end quote. Yes or no, do you agree with that statement?
That is Chief Ortiz, whom I selected to lead our Border Patrol, and I'm very proud of his leadership. I do believe that the cartels control a significant amount of territory south of our border, which is why we have an all-of-government effort to attack those cartels.
So I agree as well, and when you visit, it becomes very clear. Following up on that, do you believe that the cartels have a growing influence north of our southern border?
I believe that they have their tentacles in the United States, as they have had for many years. They have grown significantly in sophistication and size and capability since I spent my time prosecuting members of that organization when I served as a federal prosecutor.
And Mr. Secretary, I'm out of time, but I will say I agree. When we look at what drug cartels are doing, not only south of our border, but here in our country, we are allowing this crisis to make these cartels rich to the tune of billions of dollars, and the cost of that, real human faces and children in our community all across this country. So thank you, Mr. Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution grants Congress to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over D.C. So what are we doing here today? We are exercising our constitutional duty of oversight, and the founders designed it that way. If you don't like that, then there is a process to change the U.S. Constitution. You can file an amendment and try to get it passed through Congress and kick it out to the states. The D.C. Council ultimately answers to Congress, and Congress ultimately answers to the American people because, as some of my colleagues have said, this is our capital city. Every American, white, black, brown, doesn't matter the color, it's our city. All things haven't been going all too well in our capital city lately. Mr. Allen, are you currently the chair of the Public Safety Committee?
No, sir, I'm not. I'm the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee.
Were you in June of 2020 chair of the Public Safety Committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then in June of 2020, did your committee unanimously approve a plan to cut $15 million from the city police budget?
About 1% of the $500 million MPD budget, yes.
So yes? Okay. So the D.C. police chief at the time said, when asked about the plan, said it would probably force a hiring freeze and would ultimately result in a net loss of 200 plus officers. So Mr. Allen, yes or no if you could, do you believe that it's a good or bad idea to reduce the overall size of the D.C. police force?
Well, I'm not going to pretend that the summer of 2021 There wasn't a large conversation taking place about what is the appropriate size.
But
We
now,
actually have a DC auditor.
respectfully, now
Yep.
though, do you think it's a good or bad idea, yes or no?
I'm sorry, to what?
To reduce the size of the DC police force?
Right now, the auditor is trying to tell us what do we think the actual
I don't
force
care
size
about the
should be.
auditor. What do you think?
Right now, we're growing the police force. We're trying
All right,
to grow
so
it.
do you think it's a good idea to grow the DC police force?
I agree.
Yes or no?
Yes, and I have funded.
Okay,
to
so
increase that.
it's a pretty simple, and I think it is a good idea to grow it because do you recall how many officers you had in June of 2020?
I could get you that exact
It's
number. I don't
3,800.
have it exactly on top of my head.
3,800. Do you know what it is today?
I could get you the exact number. I don't have it on top of my
3,400.
head.
Okay, so it's 400 fewer police officers. So we didn't grow the force, regardless of claims that the budgets were magically increased. In fact, the police chief currently said that his goal is 4,200, and that it will take, if it ever occurs, will take a decade. So
The police chief also said that it's not an issue of budget, that we have
the
funded
policies,
positions they
sir,
cannot hire for.
sir, the policies that you all have set in place have set public safety back in our city, capital city, like over a decade. And this is the first time in 20 years we've seen 200 plus murders in D.C. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. Do you believe that D.C. is a dangerous city?
No, but hiring police officers is something our entire country is going through. I funded
Okay,
recruitment incentives,
sir,
for example, in
respectfully,
DC,
I just
from
asked you one,
Juneau, Alaska
sir, I
to
asked
New
you a
Orleans.
specific question. This isn't your time. It's our time. So you don't believe that D.C. is a dangerous city. And I don't want to get into anecdotes, so let's just look at statistics, because I think that's a really healthy way to do things. According to your own police department, the murder rate is 33 per 100,000.
I couldn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Sorry. According to your own police department, the murder rate is 33 per 100,000 in the city. Okay? The national average is 6.9. It's 478% higher in Washington. Robberies, 296 per 100,000. National average 61, 485% higher. Total violent crime, 597 per 100,000. National average 395, 151% higher. So empirically and statistically, it is a dangerous city. It is more dangerous. And, if people want to say, well, because it's a city, comparable cities like, and I just picked these out randomly, Fort Worth and Oklahoma City, murder rate is 13 per 100,000 and 12 per 100,000. So 2.5 times more likely to be murdered in D.C. than those cities. So it's clearly a very dangerous city. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record, submit for the record, an article that was written by the Washington Post where the D.C. U.S. attorney declined to prosecute 67% of those arrested. Mr. Pemberton, according to Washington Post, 67% of crimes weren't important enough to prosecute. How do you think that affects your officer morale?
It's frustrating. Officers who patrol these neighborhoods, they're looking for the people who are committing crimes, who are committing violence against others, who are terrorizing neighborhoods. They're building probable cause. They're arresting them. Our detectives are doing investigations. They're getting probable cause for warrants. They're arresting them. And then when we bring those folks down to the U.S. Attorney's Office, those cases are getting what we call no papered, which means they're getting dismissed at intake.
Yeah, and we need to protect the people of this city, not only the tourists that come here, but the people that live here. And well, my time is out. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Can I just point out that the charging decisions are made by the federal attorney?
The gentleman's time has expired, but I'll allow the gentleman to respond.
Thank you. These charging decisions are made by the federal United States attorney. He's the one who prosecutes. He's the one who decides whether to paper these cases. It's enormously frustrating to us.
Thank you, sir. The chair recognizes.
The real estate market is rapidly shifting, so if you're thinking about selling a house anywhere within about an hour of Naperville, including the blue areas on this map, and you want to ensure that you're getting as much for your house as you could and should when you sell, then this message is specifically for you because we'd love to share with you a brand new, better way to sell that's working best right now in today's market. Sellers using this method are getting way better results than those using the old-fashioned traditional methods and getting way more money when they sell and in a more convenient way. So if you'd like to find out a little bit more about exactly what these sellers are doing so that you too could get more money more conveniently, we can help you with that by giving you the 3 things that can help you to sell for more money right now. Just click that big blue button located around this video. It's probably in the bottom left or maybe below this video. Then answer a few super easy questions about the type of property that you're planning to sell. And then instantly, we'll send you a PDF version of a brand new book that spells out in great detail exactly what these sellers are doing. And when I say we're going to send it to you instantly, I mean you're going to get it within about 5 seconds. That's because we're going to text it to you because your phone is probably in your hand right now or it's right next to you. The second thing that we're going to give you is a home seller's checklist guide, and you'll find this super helpful to organize and streamline your sale. And then the third thing that we're going to give you is a price that you could get for your property if you were to sell using the methods that are described in this book. Because again, remember, these sellers are getting more money. You could get more money too. How much more? Well, we can tell you that. So click that big blue button and get your book and your checklist instantly. Now, we can't send you the price instantly because this is not some type of automated home valuation algorithm thing. Everybody knows that those are never accurate. So instead, we'll have a real person crunch some numbers behind the scenes, and then we'll get back to you within about 5 minutes with a truly accurate price. So go ahead, click that big blue button, get your book, get your checklist, and get your price, and you will be set to sell. Thanks.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Get tickets now at shenyun.com.
Thought they were spectacular.
It's something that you really can't see anywhere else. This was absolutely phenomenal.
Invigorating. It was encouraging, gave me hope.
It's just a wonderful thing to experience.
The artistry, the magic behind it is just beautiful. It's breathtaking. The orchestration is magnificent. I just can't say enough about it.
These performers used every part of their body to heal us. What they did tonight was a form of medicine.
I have to say, this has just been therapy for the soul. Chinese culture has so much history behind it. So to be able to tell that through dance is so impressive.
To see Shenyun